Frontline with Courtney Kenny, and I'm Tom Parisi, and today we got a great set of guests.
We welcome you to another episode of the Frontline Podcast. I'm Courtney Kenny. Something a little bit different, though, this time around. Tom Parisi is not joining me for this episode. Instead, I am joined by one of the guys you know and love him well from the CKAT broadcast, Mr. Bob Coles. Bob, how's it going?
It's going great. Nice to be talking hockey. I mean, it's been a long time since we talked hockey, I guess over 15 months ago. So it's great. The draft is here and looking forward to next season.
Absolutely. And my other guest co-host with me as well today is the general manager of the Powassan Voodoos and a journalist for Bay Today who covered the draft, Mr. Chris Dawson. Chris, how's it going?
Good. How are you, Courtney?
Oh, you know what? Like Bob said, we're talking some hockey. It's exciting. Things are going on. So you know what? I can't really complain. It feels like we're starting to get out of this a little bit. So I'll take that. But gentlemen, maybe I'll start with you first, Chris. I wanted to get your sense. It seems like another draft. Of course, we haven't seen them on the ice yet, but the consensus seems to be another draft that Adam Dennis has knocked out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really good things, and I think having the cheat code as in the gamer world in John Winstanley and taking a handful of players from the Toronto Junior Canadians that obviously John has actually had play for him and played through that organization that he works for is just an incredible coup for the organization to have. And that's sometimes the one challenge being up here in the north is you may not have that connection as much, but I think John really brings a unique element. I mean, I know last year when I didn't know much about John, the rumor was that Adam Fantilli was the guy the battalion were going to take because he had a tremendous relationship with John Winstanley. Now, obviously that didn't happen, but I mean, that was the first time I kind of heard about this John Winstanley, and I kept on hearing about all these players that he's been connected to throughout the years. So, I mean, to have a great guy like that to help Adam Dennis, I think it's it's awesome. So you can't say enough about the guys that help the general managers. I mean, I got a guy who I think is our cheat code in the NOJHL, and Mike Mackley, that's returned to work with us, and he does a great job recruiting. And but yeah, I mean, that's it's great to see. And I think any of the elements that we used to hear about players being skeptical about coming here, maybe thinking that it was going to be two defense first and the players wouldn't develop. And you look at some of the players that they're getting in, it's
it's an impressive.
Chris, you're frozen in time. There you are. You're back.
You did freeze a little bit on that one, Chris. We're just at the end there, but got most of the gist on that one. But Bob, I'll pose the same question to you. Just your thoughts on the haul that the North Bay Battalion got.
Well, I think we have to look at this draft a little bit different, Courtney and Chris, because we haven't seen hockey we missed a year.
Yep.
And so we don't know what their needs would have been after last season because there was no last season. And going into the draft last year, it was about developing players. It was about developing players the year after the Christopoulos twins, for example. And they went with Ty Nelson as their top pick. Wakely, another solid pick. A number of good picks. And then I noticed in this draft, the first 4 picks they made, 3 of them are big boys. I mean, 2 forwards, 1 defenseman, and you have another player 5'10". So I think they feel they're going to need size and they're going to need strength up front, depth up front. And I think that's what they've gone with in this draft.
It certainly seems that way. And last night, Tom and I put together kind of a recap of day one, and he first texted me when they got Outwater, and he said, "Is this a Brandon Coe 2.0?" And you look at the size of the kid and everything, you kind of can't really argue with that assessment too much. They're both big guys for their age and whatnot. But Chris, I wanted to get your opinion because you were kind of talking to me just before and everything about Chase Macqueen-spence. You said that you had a little bit of insight on him from I believe Mike Mackley or whichever it was. Just your opinions on him.
Yeah, I mean, I just heard, yeah, I hear like a dynamic forward and a guy that really probably slipped in the draft and could have went, much higher than he did. Much like Sema. I think, I remember hearing before the draft that Sema was a guy that was going to be a first rounder, and they ended up getting him in the second round. So I think that from a Macqueen-spence perspective, he might be a second or third rounder, but back to Bob's point is, it's just so hard this draft to evaluate the players because a lot of them weren't, playing with body contact. And, a guy like Chase Thompson, who plays a game like Brendan Gallagher, physical, in your face type of player, playing in a league when you can't use body contact probably hurt a kid like him. But, maybe these guys like, Gallagher or, Gallagher, Macqueen-spence and Romani and Sema, these guys that are dynamic, talented playmaking forwards with skill, those guys are flourishing when you don't have as much body contact.
It definitely kind of feels like if this is the draft that you're going to find a gem in the late rounds, this is definitely the draft. I mean, I don't know if you guys agree with me on that, but it's just so up in the air with this one, right?
Oh yeah, I totally agree, because the resume is missing some important games, some important competitions, some important scouting being done. How do you do your homework when there aren't games being played or very few games being played? You're talking about, I think you're talking, Courtney and Chris, about attitude and what type of character the kids have in this draft, because are they working out? Are they showing, some kind of program on their own in terms of, just being sharp and staying sharp physically and being ready to step right in at the training camp in the fall and impress the coaches and the staff. I think that plays a more important role, I think, this year, because you can say, well, I saw this kid, in a playoff series, or I saw the kids at a midget cup, or whatever the case may be. You don't have that to rely on. So you really have to go with your assessment of their character and what type of individual they are. And some players are more coachable than others. Some players are there because of their talent, and can you coach them? Some players aren't drafted high, but they just never give up and they hang in there. So it's those assessments that I think will really tell the tale on who they picked in this draft, whether they're good picks or down the road not good picks.
Chris, I kind of want to pick your general manager brain here on this one, because Bob brought up some good points with that. You're kind of in the same boat with Powassan. You guys didn't play this year, and of course there isn't a draft, but how do you think Adam's going to go into this or went into this looking at it where players haven't played the past year, with your own experiences now with the Voodoos where you haven't played in a year?
I mean, I think that he was really open for, I think that the big thing that came in is they tried to do as much research as a whole about all the players that they were getting. And it's, the very same thing as, when we find out about a good recruit, whether he's local or whether he's a kid from Toronto or Southwestern Ontario, we try to do our homework behind that player. And that's exactly what, Adam was doing. He was having to do more networking as scouts were having to make more calls, follow-up calls, not just basing it on any video scouting that they were able to do, or some of the rare events that some of the scouts were able to go to. So, I mean, that's why I think it was so unpredictable, and the battalion didn't have like a go-to first pick, because I think there was a lot of wild cards out there, and you didn't know, who was going where. I mean, for Outwater, I mean, he was written up in a lot of the Owen Sound papers as the guy that they were going to select first overall, and of course they ended up, I believe, going with Barlow instead, and and then all of a sudden that opened up the door and for a guy that I don't think Adam thought would drop out of the top 10. And so, they went and grabbed him. So, I think that, I think it was I think he went in there with, like he said, I think in the second day, he was looking more for needs, but I think in the first 3 rounds, he was just trying to get the best players he could with those 4 picks.
Yeah, I was going to say that, the first couple rounds is about, you're going to pick the best player who's still available, that type of thing. So I'm not saying his job is easier in the first 2 rounds, but sort of leads you into a direction you want to go in. Can't believe this kid's still available. Our guy was just picked. We're going to have to reassess. But when you get in the later rounds, I think it is about what does his team need?
Mhm.
And the challenge, I think, for Adam was there was no season last year. So not only are the kids that you drafted, will they fill the needs? What about the kids you drafted last year?
Yep.
Because you don't have you don't have that book open yet about some of these kids. And, so I think the GMs had a much tougher job this year in assessing who to pick, because when you have a draft, you're looking at improving your team right away. But you're also looking at improving your team in year 2 and in year 3 of these careers. So it'll be fascinating to watch the battalion when they come out of the gate in the fall, because so many new faces for the fans to get familiar with, so many new names, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be no shortage of rookies on this battalion team, since you have 2 classes to go through. And that's kind of, I guess, the next thing. I asked Adam this a couple of times, and he says it's up to the players to make this decision, basically, for the coaching staff and management. But when you look at the team and you're accounting for the players that were here the last year they played, the rookies that were to come in this past year, and now this draft, you're losing Moncada 100%. Primo, it's probably likely he's not going to be back, depending on what Vegas wants to do with him. It's kind of, when you look at it, there's really only 2 spots that we know for sure. And I'll get both your opinions, starting with Bob on this. This is a problem we haven't seen the battalion have in a while, where they have all this talent and not enough spots for them.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, someone tweeted the other day, they ran through the list of new players. Remember, guys like the Christopoulos twins and Arnsby, for example, they're among the leaders of this team, and they've played 1 season. So it's going to be a very competitive camp. And so for Ryan and his staff, I think they're going to be basing their decisions on what they see when they go to work during training camp. And it really gets, and the kids are going to have to be really ready to go from day 1 to impress this team. Because you're right, you're talking, you could have as many as 10 new players, right? That might be minimum, right? It could be 14. And that's why it's so exciting is I think that they feel they've done a really good job at setting this team up for an improved season. And now it's up to the players to deliver. I think that's great.
And Chris, your opinion on that as well? You know better than us about roster construction, so.
Yeah. It's going to be tough. You go think about it. Normally in 2 weeks from now, we'd be seeing all these kids, including the kids we hadn't seen from 2020, all gathering for a prospects camp. Well, that's not going to happen. And I know that's a very big evaluation tool, even though, some may think it's just these scrimmages, organized scrimmages don't really give them much indication, but I think it kind of gives you kind of a playing field on where this player is compared to another player, and they're not going to have that option. And who do we know how big their training camp is going to be? So, you know what I mean? The margin for error when training camps start is pretty limited. So if you have a bad training camp, the chances of you getting sent to a junior team or back to mid are a lot better than they would be maybe under some other circumstances. So, that's going to be, I think the question is, guys, is who are going to be the Ben Goudreaus that come out of training camp after not playing hockey for a year and end up standing out like Ben did for the at the under 18s and win a gold medal. How many guys are going to be like that gold medal winner coming out from a 2 battalion training camp and be ready and prepared and have been staying fit and trying to make the most of the situation, and those are the kids that are going to be the ones rising to the top when training camp starts.
Yeah, I remember your Ben Goudreau story in Beta Dacres and how he was like playing goal wherever he could. I mean, in a gym, in his basement, just to stay sharp and then in May he just blows the world with his goaltending at a championship tournament. So I think, yeah, it's those guys. I remember talking to Adam Dennis a few times, and he told me, they're in constant contact with their players, and they want a good sense of where these guys are in terms of not only mental health wise, not being able to play.
Yeah.
Where are they in terms of that, and keeping them positive and keeping the communication lines open between the returning players. I know I saw a video chat that Ty Nelson was involved with last night. And I mean, that's the type of thing, and talking about North Bay and getting the word out about North Bay. And it's that type of thing that I think the battalion have been really good at fostering during this difficult time, because, there's excitement right now, but in the fall, these guys are going to be competing against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think the video you were talking about was the one with Nelson and Wakely calling out Water. And
Yeah, that's right.
And you got to think about Wakely. I mean, I think he has a spot on this team 110% for sure. And I love everything that he brings to the table. But you think of some of the other guys, like maybe an Owen Van Steensel, who was going to be, get into some games last year. Now he's looking at this Outwater kid as competition, right? So, and not only him, but I mean the other ones as well. But at the end of the day, competition is a good thing when it comes to internal like that. Like, and you look at their back end as well, there's not really any spots for any defenseman to be able to, have an extended lull or anything like we've seen in the past. You need to be on your best from day one, like you mentioned, Bob.
And style too. It's going to be interesting. This is the first training camp for Ryan Houlihan as head coach of the battalion. I mean, we're going to learn a lot about who they picked, but also the way they play. And I think that's going to be fun to watch too, is that Ryan is a very calm guy, but don't confuse that with, that he's just going to let you get away with stuff. He's going to keep the irons in the fire, so to speak. And because it's going to be competitive with so many potential roster decisions, I think they're going to be an interesting team, a fun team to watch, because you've got all these new things happening.
I know it's a year like no other, of course, but Chris, since the team has come to town, have you felt like there's ever been really this kind of this amount of hope or optimism or whichever going into a training camp that we are still months away from?
Well, I would think kind of the year or two after they ended up, having the run to the final, I think everybody was still pretty excited about how things were in 2014 of the, training camp. But, obviously we were spoiled here, getting 2 great playoff runs in our first 2 years when North Bay got back. But certainly this is I think the most excitement you've seen, definitely since then, I think. And Bob, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but yeah, it has been a few years since we've had the excitement at this level. And, we also have to remember when it comes to roster spots, we know that, in a couple of weeks before the NHL draft, there's an import draft, and the battalion have lost Guskov because he's signed in the KHL. So they'll be taking an import pick. And then there's the U18 draft on Wednesday, which I mean, I don't know if anybody would battle for a spot for this season in that draft, but you never know with how strange this year is. But yeah, so there's still a lot of things to do that are going to make it even more exciting. So
Yeah, I mean, year one was just everything was new, and I don't think you could ever repeat year one. It was new, and you had a really good team, and the team went all the way to the finals, and training camp was interesting, but they didn't play here. So they didn't play here as the Gardens was being getting ready for the OHL. So, but I think there'll be more interest in the training camp this year because of what just getting, I mean, you're going to see people go in the building to watch scrimmages with excitement, fans, because they haven't been in the building for over a year. I mean, think about that. Like, you wouldn't have thought of that a year ago, right?
No.
A bit ago.
And that's their needle, Bobby. They went in there to get their injection.
To watch it, yeah, yes. Other than getting a COVID shot, you know, and you're like preseason games. Usually, you might get 500 people. That first preseason game, you might get 2,000 people in there. Live junior hockey. I mean, I think people have missed it, and I think people are, and because of the excitement we've talked about, we're going to have some fun.
I think one of the big things too is that not only are you excited for the hockey and the players coming in, but we still have yet to see the first overall pick, Ty Nelson, with our own eyes, and I think that's a big enough pull right there, right? So he's for all accounts, he's got all the talent in the world. So I'm excited to see him play for sure.
Yeah, it's been such a long time. You forget one overall. I mean, it wasn't just your first round pick. He was the top pick. So, you know, it's, and what I like about Ty Nelson is, you know, he's very well spoken, and he's out there on social media. So he's, you know, I think he's going to be a good, I was going to say young leader, but now it's he's a veteran before playing an OHL game in the bizarre world we live in. But yeah, you're right. And we get to see two first round picks in the same game. So that's gonna be fun to watch.
Well, I do have to say that Tom and I have had the fortune of interviewing all the players that were signed from last year's draft. You know, Nelson, Wakely, Mathurin, Van Steensel, and DiVincentis, and all of them very well spoken for their age, very mature beyond their years too. And obviously you can tell the type of person that Adam's targeting in these drafts. He's looking for those people that are ahead of them, you know, off the ice mentally, they're ahead of their peers.
Well, and Chris, you'll agree with that. That's sort of Adam, isn't it? I mean, you know, if you ever sit down and talk with him, you can have, you know, he's not sort of your old school general manager. You can talk about hockey with him and have an intelligent conversation with him. And then you could talk about something else with him and so it's sort of not surprising that he would pick those types of players as a general manager.
So Chris, I wanted to get your opinion on someone else, just because we were in the same Zoom meeting together with Adam on this guy. And it's the first goalie that they took, Charlie Robertson. I know maybe there might not be a lot of information out there, but this seems like a guy that has a lot of ties to Adam Dennis in a lot of different ways.
Oh, you know what? I don't know a lot about the ties. I just know a little bit about the scouting report that I haven't seen any video of him. I know that he's supposed to be a mixture of athleticism and like to get his body in front of the puck and use be like a vacuum cleaner like Talbot and Carey Price. But yeah, I don't know a whole lot about him. But I mean, I think at that point, I mean, they got two goalies. I think they need to add some depth. You know, Owen Ray, who played with us, was drafted in the North American League and probably was going to play in Powassan, but like going to be going down to the North American League, and he was going to be kind of the maybe a third backup goalie or to come in as a third goalie. So that's on. There's Wade Maneg, who's still property with us as well. That's still property. So you have him, you have DeVincentis, you still have Reese Prue and Verbetic. So he's just trying to get the pool together, because just like every other position, guys, even though there's only a couple of goalies, you still need to have some competition between the pipes. And if you don't have competition, then it kind of leads to, a guy maybe not playing at his level because he has no one pushing him, and I mean, I've even heard some rumors that Adam may even be looking at a European goalie in the import drafts, which I don't know if that's true. I haven't asked Adam, but I've heard those rumblings going around. But anyways, competition is always good, and you have to have competition. And so I think that by getting Robertson and then getting the Bure kid late from Thunder Bay, I think it just builds more competition.
Well, you are all of us here on this in this conversation know well that even if you were to ask Adam, he's pretty good at skating or dancing around the question himself. A friend of the show, Adam Dennis, that is. But just for those who weren't privy to it, he had mentioned that his former goalie coach was Robertson's goalie coach as well, and of course playing down in London. 2005 born Adam, very fond of the year 2005, of course, with the Memorial Cup champs and whatnot. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Chris. You might have a bit of a more insight on these guys, but Bob, I'll get your opinion too, just because the battalion aren't shy about taking local kids, and they took 2 local kids here in this draft. And Chris, I'll just get you to talk about them a little bit, and then Bob, if you don't mind coming in after that, just talking about they're not, like I said, they're not shy to take local kids.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understood about Caden Long and Chase Thompson, that was they were going to go in the middle of the draft. Some people even had them rated in the top 60. Chase being the one in the top 60 because he actually played his minor midget year as a 14-year-old. So he actually had 2 minor midget years. He played for Scott Hike's U16 AAA team as a Bantam age player in 2019-20 and put up some decent numbers playing for the Trappers in the Great North Midget League. So he had that to his benefit, and then went down and played with the Young Nats this past season. So, as for Caden Long, I know Caden fairly well. Caden played my son's first year rep hockey. He played up and played with Caden and played on a line with Caden for part of the year way back in novice. Seems like a long time ago. And I shared a video on social media and watching that little water bug out there. But the one Caden's always been able to skate. He's got a passionate family for hockey. His dad, Mark Long, is a real character. And ever since he coached my son, we've actually become pretty good friends. But he really cares about his kids. He's got a rink in his backyard, and I think he definitely wants the best for Caden. And you know what, he's developed, and like I said, the main thing with him is his skating, and you know what, he needs to maybe get a little bit stronger, but he's got some great wheels, and if he keeps on developing, getting a little bigger and stronger, even though he's a late pick, that doesn't mean he can't wear a battalion jersey one day.
Caden Long, if the mayor in North Bay didn't have season tickets, I think he's probably ordered them today. But that's Caden Long, of course, is Mark and Corey are, of course, Caden's parents. So that's for people who don't know. So I think it's great if you select local players, as long as they're picked, where they should be picked. And I think it, as Chris answered, that seems to be a good job there. It's great. It's great to attract interest. Local players playing for their hometown team. That's a dream of most kids. And I think it's good the battalion do it. And, I don't think they're doing it because these players are local. I think they're doing it because, they're just good picks, and that's where they should be picked. And North Bay's turn came up, and they made those choices. So it'll be fun to watch. I mean, it'll be fun to watch. I mean, not every player selected by your hometown team, sometimes, you know, you don't do it for promotional reasons, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You do it because it's the right pick to make. And it seems the battalion have that in perspective.
Well, I think one of the real interesting things with Chase really sums up the legacy of the North Bay Battalion. When I interviewed Chase for our Beta Day feature before the draft, he said one of his little anecdotes about growing up playing hockey was he was playing for the Powassan Hawks, and some guy named Nick Paul ended up coming out and coming to their practice. And at that moment, he said he saw and really at that time said, you know, I want to really, you know, I want to be an OHLer with the North Bay Battalion. And, you know, just a couple years later, he played A hockey in minor Pee Wee and made the jump to AAA and hit the ground running. And then, you know, a couple years later, he was playing ahead of his age group because he developed so much. And, you know, so to see him, start out as being a big Battalion fan by meeting a player and using that as an inspiration, and now here he is getting drafted, I think is the whole legacy behind what the North Bay Battalion is trying to do, at least locally, you know. And with a kid that later in the draft, certainly the one thing I think is you don't have as much pressure, and you know, sometimes it doesn't matter if you're in A or suburb, you take a local kid with the first pick, there's a lot of pressure on him. And I think that in a lot of cases with Pacey and Brady Lyle, there were a lot of expectations for those two to come in and really shine right away. And sadly, unfortunately for both of them, that good for Brady, he's gone on and now he had a great season in the American Hockey League, and we'll see how things go for Pacey and Saginaw, but both of them weren't able to finish their career here.
Yeah, I think first round picks are different than the round, right? And that was the case in both of those guys. And your Brady developed and outside of North Bay, and that's good on him. And Pacey, I think Pacey was scratched a lot his first year, and that had to really hurt his development. He probably shouldn't have been picked in that spot. I think he could have been picked in another round, but he was scratched a lot. I remember from that year. And then it was just late in the season, he started to show some growth. And then of course the season was over, right? So then there was another draft next year. So first round is totally different than the later rounds for sure.
I'll throw one out there, and I don't know if you have him on your depth chart, but you might want to add him, Courtney. Okay. And this is from my junior A experience, and even actually he played this year in Pembroke, and that's Jack Stockfish. And Jack was part of that amazing group. He's one of the best minor hockey coaches in a long time. In Mike Stockfish, the amount of time and effort he put into players like Pacey and the other really good O2 players from that age group. And one of them, Ben Brunette, has a Division I commitment under his belt. But Jack Stockfish is a kid that we need to keep an eye on. I don't know if he's going to go potentially Division I, but I know he's got people knocking on his door. He's a big, strong centerman. He got drafted here, same draft year as Pacey, but he has developed and he has filled out, and he might be a surprise for a lot of people who haven't seen him play in a couple years. He might be a guy you should watch that might make this hockey team as a local guy and maybe even an impact guy.
Wow, we'll keep that in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, especially and that's Jack Stockfish for those who didn't get that, because Chris, you did cut out when you said his name, just literally just when you said his name,
just for those 2 seconds.
Yeah.
I think Mike might have done, that was his dad. Mike was pulling that because Mike's a very humble man. He probably doesn't want people talking up his kid and stuff, but very humble family, wonderful kid, and I hope the best for Jack and his dad. His dad's son done so much for minor hockey here. I think it would be a real exciting thing, just like for Caden and Chase to get drafted. I think it'd be a real thrill for Mike Stockfish to see Jack wear a Battalion jersey this fall.
Well, you mentioned Nick Paul, and you're right. It does have an impact on young players when the Battalion players show up at their practice and or do something in the community, whatever the case may be. And you know, when people see Nick Paul, you know, playing for a gold medal, or Barclay Goodrow in the playoffs, or whatever the case may be, it sends a message that if you work hard at something, the results can be there for you at the end.
Oh,
Yeah,
you know what? And Nick Paul has got to be one of the. I mean, Courtney's had a chance the last little while to talk to him on the podcast. But you know, I had Nick Paul had lunch one afternoon. You know, before, right during the playoffs. I think it was in the spring of 2015. It was my son's birthday, and Nick Paul ended up coming at Burger World and sitting with Caleb and Scott Ray's son Mason Ray, and you know what, he talked to the kids, and I think I think Miles Liberati was with him too, and you know, he was just such a down to earth and really cared about his time in North Bay. And you know, I think, you know, obviously you heard you talking to him, Courtney, and I got a chance to talk to him when he was playing with Chris Neal, where it was kind of two worlds, two major junior worlds colliding, with Chris and Nick actually playing on a line, and Chris being one of the last Centennials to play in the NHL. And I mean, he loved it here. You know, he loved it here. So, you know what, I'm sure if he read or heard the story about this Chase Thompson kid from Powassan, you know, remembering him at a practice, I'm sure it would make his day over in Latvia, you know. So
yeah, and that'd be pretty.
I remember,
considering he has a gold medal to worry about. So there's a lot of days being made over there in Latvia right now for Mr. Paul.
yeah,
his billet, I forget the officer's name, but fell off the roof, and that was Nick Paul's billet.
yes, okay, yeah, Jerry Martin.
Yeah. Jerry Martin. And I remember interviewing Nick Paul. We had an interview lined up. It was 3 days after this incident, and you know, all Nick could talk about was Jerry Martin. And it just shows you that even if they leave for their careers, Bill Holder's the same way when he came here to talk about Eva Leslie and you know, his billet when he played for the Centennials. And it's the impact that playing for an OHL team has on these players. They grow up and they become men and have their own families, but they never forget those important years that where they played junior hockey, for sure.
No, and I do have to say this about Nick, just getting to know him a little bit through our conversations. Back when I used to be a Leafs fan, I was seriously considering getting a Senators jersey with Nick Paul's name on it, which would have been sacrilege. But now I don't feel so bad now that I'm all about the Seattle Kraken, so I can go and get an Ottawa Senators jersey if I want.
Go Kraken.
Yeah, release the Kraken. But
is this like Brian? You and Brian Floyd have made a pact, and you're both changing to you're going to the left coast, are you?
it seems that way. A guy I work with as well, he's done with the Leafs, and said every time he calls into work or something and I have to talk to him, he always ends every conversation with "release the Kraken." So but listen, guys, one more thing I wanted to ask you. It's not battalion related. And for our listeners, they're going to hear the scrums coming up with Adam after this. And I asked him this question as well. But just your opinion, Taya Curry, the first female ever drafted into the OHL at 267th overall by the Sarnia Sting. Just remarkable to see that happen. And I just wanted to get your opinions on that before we go.
I think it's great. Remember when Manon Rhéaume played in the NHL back in the day? And there were a lot of people who just, you know, unfairly said this was just, you know, for PR reasons. Of course it wasn't. You look at women's hockey today and you know, and how exciting a game it is, and got the World Championships coming up, and it's the same thing. I think this is just another step that if you can play, you should be able to play, and regardless of what league it is or at what time. And I think this is a great move by the Sting. It's going to be interesting to follow. Excuse me. It's going to be interesting to follow her progress, but I think it's a good move, and And obviously it's getting a lot of attention and deservedly so.
Chris?
Well, I can tell you that I don't think I've ever said this publicly, so the front line's getting the scoop here. I can tell you that a few years ago, the Powassan Voodoos looked at the opportunity to bring Danica Ranger into the Voodoos training camp before she committed to play at Nipissing University. I had talked to Darren Turcott about it. I ended up talking to her junior coach. And at the time, the issue was that if a female goaltender plays at that level, it takes them out of the equation for the national team. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that was sort of the story I got, because I found out later a very good goalie coach that does a lot of work around here named Dan Spence. He actually played against Shannon Zabados in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. So maybe there's some rules that have changed since then with the national team pool, but apparently that was the story that we got. But yeah, we looked at it, and I'm really happy for this girl in Sarnia, and I hope the best for her. She looks like I've been reading some stuff about all the work that she's put in to try to be better, and it's a unique position, and I don't see any issue at all with having a female between the pipes of a men's team.
And just to give you a sense, I was watching the playoff game today between Tampa and Carolina.
Oh, wasn't that crazy?
And NBC did in their intermission mentioned it and talked about it. So I think it really sends the message to young girls that they can accomplish their dreams. They have to work at them, but they can accomplish their dreams. And there shouldn't be roadblocks put in front of them. And it's good on the OHL and the Sarnia Sting for making this public and news today.
Absolutely. Well said, gentlemen. And I have to thank you again for stepping up to be my special co-host for this draft recap episode. Bob, it's always great catching up with you, and Chris, always great catching up with you as well.
Well, nice to see you, Courtney. And hopefully you'll stick with the Leafs. Don't give up on them.
Don't give up on you know what, the abuse that Mike Zarka gets for dropping the Sabres. I tell you what, I will focus that energy on you and Brian Floyd. So be prepared for some misery, because I'll give you guys a hard time.
All right. Go Leafs, go. As long as they bring back Jason Spezza. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
See you, Courtney.
Once again, a huge thank you to Bob Coles, who I've known far too long now, thanks to doing the CKAT broadcast. And of course, Chris Dawson, the general manager of the Powassan Voodoos and journalist with Bay Today, who covered the draft for Bay Today all weekend long, basically competing with him in the media scrums with Adam Dennis. So that'll do it for this one, I should say. This has been the Frontline Podcast. Again, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Chris, for stepping up and helping out. Tom will be back for the very next episode, of course, as always. And I got to thank our producer, Ben Sargent. I got to thank Adam Dennis for, giving us the scrum material that we're able to throw on that you're going to hear here in a moment. And that'll do it for this one. It's been fun, as Tom says. We'll do it again.